Hi, today we're on to Nurgle, in this tiny little series where I paint different Chaos Warriors for the old world, but always in a process that is simple and quick enough to be suitable for troopers. I painted quite a lot of Nurgle on this channel before, so I could pretty much just have reused any old paint scheme like the Even Kitten Killers or something else, but I wanted something even simpler. In the end it didn't really work out as I expected, but it still turned out decent enough to be something to show. So enough talking, let's just head over to the paint job. Today the things tested were to start a paint job at the primer, together with using the gunky nature of the oil colors as a feature. In a sense, the plan was pretty similar to the old school Warriors, putting a lot of trust into the spray-on primer. This is likely to be more useful if you have an airbrush, but with the right approach, it can work with rattle can as well. One major reason that the same plan from the old school Warriors wasn't attractive is that while these warriors are just as much a walking suit of armor, most of them are actually covered in their cloak and shield. If you spray metallics on these, at least using a rattle can, you will still have to cover the organic stuff of the cloak in some suitable color. So instead of black followed by metal, I went with black followed by this hideously bright green called apple green. This was then topped off by a halfway pale yellow named Vanilla. And ironically, he turned out to look like something pear flavored. Confidence was not high, but most methods pass some sort of ugly phase, so moving on with the plan. We now have a miniature, where cloak and armor have exactly the same color. We don't want that, but we also don't want to spend time painting over something that we just spent time painting. The idea is to cover both halves in different oil colors, and then wipe off. In theory, this will create two colors with the same base color as highlights. As a bonus, this would bring a sense of coherency for just, pure free. In the end, I must admit that I chickened out a bit and painted the weapon and chainmail and metal, a little belt buckle. It just struck me as weird having a green weapon. But if you think that's fine, just let it be as well. First, the front was covered in a mixture of green and black. Not fully mixed together, just mashed up. Because these are Nurgle. It is actually kind of hard to paint random stuff, harder than you think. But you don't have to try so hard if you start with something random. Just like with the Siege Warrior, you can apply this stuff pretty heavy. But the same rules apply. Gunk on as heavy as you want on the flat parts, especially on this guy, but stay lean in the recesses. You want texture, not to cover up the details. Not even on Nurgle. Next up was covering all the non-metal in 50-50, black and burnt umber. It is really a great simple recipe for darkening anything organic. This time I really made an effort to really rub it in, because on a lot of these parts you will mix in more colors, and then you really want to avoid thick paint. Finally, I brought out some red iron oxide to cover all the metal in order to get a sense of rust and neglect. Now he's all covered in dark oil colors of various thickness. If you for some reason think this is quality content, please press the like button as it helps me to evaluate the videos. People who have watched any of the previous videos, you know what is next. Bring out the Q-tips and white spirit. But once again, start out with a dry tip and wipe the cloak, horns and other organic things. Most notably the cloak immediately turned out pretty tabletop ready. Dry wiping really is such a hack when it comes to creating gradients with a texture. With the yellowish primer, this immediately turned out into a dark brown cloak where the highlights shift into an unhealthy yellow. Next up, we pop the lid of the white spirit and do the same thing as with the Siege guy. Wipe off most spirit and then stab away at the edges of all armor and trim. Once again, and even more so, avoid smooth edges. For our tabletop readability, we need to define the edges, but nothing should be neat. This is Nurgle. Most notably, the head and shield trim got almost all cleaned up, leaving pretty much a dirty down pale yellow. Then exactly the same thing was done with the weapon. Perhaps you want to clean it up a little bit more because you actually want some of this metallic shine to shine through. Otherwise that would just be, stupid to do that in the first place. At this stage, boots and gloves were just looking undefined. The solution was to mix in burnt umber, and then on top of that, stipple and smudge brush a bit of buff with burnt umber, and then finally some pure buff. I have bought 2 burnt umbers, and they both struggle to cover well, but I found that if you mix in a bit of white or buff, this is all fixed. I probably don't have to tell you, but exactly the same thing was done with the horns. These all were the only things where the primer plan just didn't cut it. Now here really is ready for basing, but just because it's so easy, I opted to take a minute and sprinkle on a bit of pigment at the bottom of the cloak. I thought it would help to define the edges, but well, it didn't really do that, but instead it created a nice sense of mold. Very appropriate. Now he's off to the basing. It's the same basing as all the other warriors, and we can just skip straight to the result. In the end, I think this is a quite decent result. It did take a bit more than 30 minutes, which is ironical because I wanted to cut down on the time and, well, not cut down on the time. I wanted to keep it simple. And simple often means less time spent. But apparently not this time. But I think they can be done in 30 minutes. I mean, I think it was just me not being really concentrated. So let's move on with the stuff that I like about him and the stuff that I don't like about him. If you have any opinions, just put them in the comments. So let's start about the stuff that I do like. And I like the cloak. I mean, these cloaks have pretty much all turned out great. Dry wiping, oil colors, that is just such a hack when you want to make a texture gradient with a texture. I mean, that's tabletop standard, straight out of the box there. And I also like the head. The head, this is also some sort of tabletop quality stuff. A head that you can easily spot. You can just immediately tell how many of these fellows you have on the board. So those are things that I do like. And I don't think the video really catches this really well, but in real life you can really tell that there is a texture going on the shield. With the sort of gunked on, I don't know if that's a word, but all the heavy green color stippled on there in a rough manner. So it really looks nice in reality, at least. But then the shield, I think this is also part of the miniature where I dislikes the most. Like the edge up here. The idea was to wipe off quite a bit so that you actually see the edge here, and you do, and it's kind of well defined because you get this sort of pear flavor underneath there. But I'm much more happy with the Zinch guys, where you actually mix in a bit of white, making it a bit paler and yeah, defining it in a different way. I think that, and it doesn't take that much more time, so I think that's a better way to do it, even with these guys. And then the red iron oxide, I don't know if that was actually needed. I mean, Yeah, the weapon almost looks like burnt umber. I could probably just used burnt umber, which I brought out anyway. I could have kept down the number of colors, but yeah, it's an experiment. I mean, or I should have taken more care, like the chainmail down here. It doesn't really show that it looks rusty. Probably in the right lighting conditions, you can tell that it's a bit red down there, but it pretty much got swallowed up in and all the other black and green and gunky stuff. So that was a bad choice as well. But hey, you know, such is life when you experiment. And as long as you like that, you know, just keep experimenting. And if you don't, well, don't do that. That's all up to you.